As the House impeachment inquiry moves forward, Democratic investigators are seeking a testimony from former National Security Advisor John Bolton. But Fox News sources confirm Mr. Bolton is not willing to appear voluntarily, with his attorney saying he's awaiting a subpoena before he appears. This as judges are already considering a couple of cases where the administration is contesting congressional subpoenas in the impeachment inquiry. Let's bring in our legal panel now. Alex Little is here. He's a partner for Burr and Foreman and is a criminal defense and litigation attorney. Also with us is Chris Stazak. He is a former assistant attorney general with the New York State Attorney General's office and former senior investigative counsel on the House Committee on Oversight and Reform. Thanks to both of you for being here.
Good afternoon.
Absolutely. And Alex, you are up first, by the way. In where does the power lie? Congressional subpoenas or executive privilege?
You know, this is an interesting issue because it hasn't come up really that much yet. There are two cases that are pending right now before the district court in D.C., but 15 individuals have already testified, and that tells you, at least for that 15, they felt like they needed to or wanted to testify to Congress. So there hasn't been a bigger fight than maybe we might expect. In terms of who has the power ultimately, I expect that most of the people who have been called to testify will be forced to testify. Impeachment is a constitutional power. It is vested with the House and then ultimately the trial with the Senate, and I expect the judges are going to want that evidence to come before Congress.
So, Chris, the Democrats can choose to subpoena or not to subpoena. Should the Democrats call on all of Republicans' witnesses?
Well, I think if they want this to be perceived as a fair process, then I think the Democrats are going to make a mistake if they don't allow the Republicans to call their own witnesses, because ultimately, if he is impeached, this goes to the Senate, as I think Alex just mentioned, and then the senators are going to sit in judgment. And just like in a trial, for example, a criminal trial, the prosecutors have to disclose exculpatory evidence, or ultimately a conviction could be overturned. So it's the more you want to get at Trump, the more you should want a fair investigation. So I think they should not interfere. None of the Democrats should interfere with the Republicans calling their witnesses.
Alex, how would you characterize the kind of witness you would expect former National Security Advisor John Bolton to be?
I think John Bolton, when he testifies, if he does testify, and I expect he will, is going to be one of the most important witnesses in this process. John Bolton has a sterling conservative record. I don't think anybody would suggest for a minute that he's aligned with Democrats. And if he says things that's critical of President Trump, after essentially auditioning for the job to be his national security advisor, I think that testimony could be very damaging. So far, what has been interesting in the testimony we've heard about the National Security Council is that then National Security Advisor Bolton was very concerned about this trade, this quid pro quo, and I think he's going to give some Republican senators pause if they believe they can stick with this, oh, well, it's not that big a deal, we'll let the president do it, it didn't succeed anyway. So his testimony is going to be critical.
Chris, who has the stronger legal position going into this week? This is a big week. President Trump supporters or those who want to impeach him?
Well, I think with respect to the subpoenas, ultimately, the power of Congress to subpoena is well established, and it's hard to overcome. So I think in terms of getting people to have to appear before Congress, I think the subpoena power will prevail. However, if it comes to this, no matter whether you're subpoenaed or not or forced to actually show up, no American can ultimately be forced to testify if they want to invoke their Fifth Amendment rights. And I think even before we get there, there is a legitimate argument to be made, at least up to a certain point, about different privileges, executive privilege and others that they will assert.
And how much, stay with you, Chris, how much will all the details and the legalese and the appeals and waiting for court decisions, how much of all of that will bog down this entire process?
Well, it's definitely going to bog it down. The question is for how long. And if there are this many witnesses and if the White House is going to resist subpoenas, then each one of them is going to have to be fought out, at least for a while. So, but ultimately, and I agree with, I think, what Alex was suggesting before, ultimately, the back and forth on the subpoenas will be resolved, and then it's going to be up to the House to vote one way or the other, and the process will go on from there. But you can't stop it altogether.
Alex, final thoughts from you?
Yeah, I think this week is going to be really important. There's a few witnesses left. I think Bolton's going to be critical. I think the White House lawyer, John Eisenberg, I think is his name, is going to be really critical. But the House has, I think, what they think they need to establish articles of impeachment. I don't think it's going to get bogged down that long. You're going to see them move into a different phase of trying to sell this to the public. And this is going to get, I think, before the Senate quicker than we expect.
Okay, you said it. We heard Alex Little say it right here. So we'll call you back and see if your prediction comes to pass. Alex Little and Chris
Okay,
Staszak. Thanks to both
Take
of
care.
you. You too.
Well, it's time to break out your window clothes as expected.